I reported my wife's brand new car stolen. It was a dark blue SUV, shiny and expensive. The kind she'd been dreaming about for years. The tricky part was, it was legally in my name. And the even trickier part, she bought it with our son's college tuition money. All of it. That's how this whole mess started. I am Mark, and I was married to Sarah for 20 years. We had one son, Liam, who was 18 and just got into his dream university. He was smart, hardworking, and excited about engineering. We'd been saving for his tuition since he was born. Not just a little bit, but every spare dime. We had a separate savings account, specifically for Liam's education. It was a joint account, but we had an unspoken agreement. That money was sacred. It was for Liam. We'd even discussed it recently, how close we were to the total amount needed for his first year, maybe even 2. Liam was counting on it. We were counting on it. I work as a software engineer, pretty stable job. Sarah worked part-time at a local boutique, bringing in some extra income. But I was the main earner. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We always lived within our means, or so I thought. Sarah had always had a bit of a spending habit. Nothing too wild usually. A new pair of shoes here, a fancy handbag there. But it usually stayed within her own allowance. Or at least, that's what she told me. I tried not to scrutinize too much. Trust, you know. It's important in a marriage. Turns out, maybe I trusted too much. The day everything blew up started like any other Tuesday. I came home from work, tired but looking forward to dinner with my family. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a strange car. It wasn't just strange, it was new. A sleek, dark blue SUV, parked right where Sarah usually parked her old sedan. It was much bigger, much fancier. My first thought was that she was test driving it, or maybe a friend was visiting. But then I saw the for sale sticker was gone, and there was a temporary tag taped to the rear window. My heart started to beat a little faster. I walked into the house and the first thing I heard was Sarah's excited voice. "Mark, come here. You won't believe it." She practically skipped into the living room, a huge smile on her face. "Look what I got." I just stood there, trying to process it. "What is that?" I asked, my voice a little too flat. "My new car," she practically shrieked, like a teenager. "Isn't it beautiful? I've wanted one of these forever." I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. "Sarah, where did you get the money for this?" I asked. We hadn't discussed a new car. We hadn't even discussed looking at new cars. Our old one was perfectly fine. Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, you know, just some savings. It was a really good deal. I just couldn't pass it up." Some savings. I walked over to her, my voice growing colder. "Sarah, a car like that cost a fortune. We have Liam's tuition to worry about. We just talked about how we needed every penny for him. Where did some savings come from?" She started to get defensive. "Don't interrogate me, Mark. I got a good price. It's an investment." "An investment?" I almost laughed, but it was a bitter, humorless sound. A depreciating asset is an investment now. I took a deep breath. "Sarah, seriously. Where did the money come from? Did you take out a loan without telling me?" She looked away, suddenly interested. In a speck of dust on the floor. No loan. That's when a terrible thought, a gut-wrenching possibility began to form in my mind. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't. Not after all these years. Not after all we sacrificed for Liam. "Tell me it wasn't Liam's tuition money," I said, my voice barely a whisper. My blood ran cold as I watched her flinch. Her face went pale. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Sarah, I said, my voice rising, tell me you didn't touch Liam's tuition account. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were full of something I didn't recognize. Fear, shame, and maybe a tiny flicker of defiance. It was just sitting there, Mark. And my old car was practically falling apart. I needed something reliable. My jaw dropped. My hands started to shake. Falling apart? It passed inspection last month. And you needed a luxury SUV? Sarah, that money was for Liam's future. It was everything. Do you know how much was in that account? She started to cry. Not the quiet, remorseful kind of crying, but the loud, dramatic kind. Don't yell at me. I work hard too. I deserve nice things. Deserve nice things? I roared, my voice echoing in the house. The expense of our son's education, at the expense of his entire future.
Sarah, that was his ticket to college.
We can always get a loan for him, she wailed, tears streaming down her face. It's not the end of the world. A loan? I stared at her in disbelief. We worked our whole lives to avoid loans for him, to give him a debt-free start. And you just unilaterally decided to empty his account for a car? I walked straight to my office, heart pounding, a sick feeling churning in my stomach. I pulled up our bank accounts, the joint savings for Liam's tuition. I clicked on it, my breath caught in my throat. The balance. A huge withdrawal dated just 2 days ago, enough to buy that monster SUV. My vision blurred, the world spun. All those years of penny pinching, of saying no to vacations, of driving old cars, of extra shifts, all for that account. Car in my name, because she couldn't get a loan big enough on her own. Or maybe the dealership required the primary earner to be on the loan. I couldn't even remember signing anything for a car purchase, which was another red flag, but that was a detail for later. The primary thing was the money. Liam's money gone. I stood there, looking at the screen, unable to move. The sound of Sarah's sobbing from the living room seemed distant, muffled. My mind raced. Liam, what was I going to tell Liam? How do you tell your brilliant, hopeful son that his mother just stole his future? That's when the anger, cold and sharp, cut through the shock and heartbreak. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was rage, pure, unadulterated fury. She didn't just spend the money. She betrayed me. She betrayed Liam. She stole from her own son. And she did it under my nose, probably forging my signature on some documents if it was indeed in my name. My hands clenched into fists. I closed the laptop, walked out of the office, and stood in the doorway of the living room, where Sarah was still curled up on the couch, pretending to be the victim. You really did it, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You actually did it. She looked up at me red-faced and puffy-eyed. Mark, please, don't make a big deal out of this. We'll figure it out. Figure it out? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Tea here is nothing to figure out, Sarah. You stole from our son. You stole his future. And I am going to do something about it. She sat up, a look of confusion on her face. What are you talking about? That car, I said, pointing vaguely towards the driveway. That car you just bought with Liam's tuition money. It's technically in my name, isn't it? Because I am the primary account holder. Or because you needed my credit score for a loan, even though you used cash. I didn't even care about the specifics of the purchase at that moment, just that it was tied to me. She looked bewildered. Yes, the dealership said it had to be in both our names, or just yours if you were the main buyer. But it's my car, Mark. No, Sarah, I said, and my voice was so quiet, so flat it scared even me. It's not your car, not anymore. It's stolen property. Her eyes widened. What are you saying? I am saying, I began pulling out my phone, that I am calling the police, and I am reporting a brand new dark blue SUV, registered in my name, stolen from my driveway. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. The sobbing stopped. Her face, still streaked with tears, turned an ashen white. She stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time in years, truly seeing the anger and the pain I held. You wouldn't, she whispered. I just looked at her, no emotion left in my eyes. Watch me. I dialed 911. My finger hovered over the call button. I looked at her one last time, hoping for some sign of real remorse, some indication that she understood the gravity of what she had done, and was willing to fix it. But there was nothing but fear and resentment in her gaze. It was a blank slate. I pressed call. The dispatcher answered, and I took a deep breath. Yes, I'd like to report a stolen vehicle, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Sarah sprang off the couch. Mark, no, don't do this. You'll ruin everything, she shrieked, rushing towards me. I held up a hand to stop her. Give me the make and model, the dispatcher said. I rattled off the details of the new SUV. Sarah was practically jumping up and down, trying to grab the phone. Mark, think about Liam. Think about us. Registered in your name, sir? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I confirmed, looking directly at Sarah, who froze, her face a mask of horror. It's in my name. It was purchased without my knowledge or consent, using funds from a joint account that was specifically earmarked for my son's college tuition. I did not authorize the purchase. I did not give permission for those funds to be used for a car. The dispatcher paused. Sir, can you clarify? Was it taken from your property without your permission? Yes, I said. It was taken, purchased, and brought onto my property without my permission or knowledge regarding the source of funds, which were then illegally diverted. I consider it stolen. It wasn't a perfect legal definition, maybe, but it was the truth of how I felt, and it was legally in my name, which meant I had a claim. Sarah was silent now, just staring at me, her mouth slightly open, her chest heaving. You called the police, she whispered, her voice trembling. You actually called the police on me? What did you expect, Sarah? I asked, my voice still unnervingly calm. Did you expect me to just smile and say, oh well, there goes Liam's future, but at least you have a shiny new toy? Did you think I'd just roll over and let you destroy everything we worked for? Everything Liam worked for? It's not destroying everything, she yelled, her voice suddenly regaining its volume. We can get alone. People do it all the time. You are overreacting. Overreacting? I took a step towards her. Sarah, we spent 2 decades building that fund. 2 decades of sacrifices. Liam studied his butt off, got incredible grades, worked part-time jobs, thinking he had this security, thinking he had this head start. And you just, what? Saw a car you liked and emptied it. What was going through your head? She folded her arms across her chest. My car was old. It was embarrassing. All my friends have new cars. I work hard too, Mark. I deserve nice things. You deserve nice things? I repeated, the incredulity in my voice rising. You deserve nice things at the cost of our son's future. At the cost of his dreams. Sarah, what kind of mother does that? Don't you dare call me a bad mother, she screamed, pointing a finger at me. I do everything for this family. I cook, I clean, I raise Liam. And you are just throwing it all away over a car. You are the one who threw it all away. I countered, my voice finally breaking, the pain surfacing. You destroyed our trust. You stole from your own son. What kind of example is that for Liam? That if you want something, you just take it, regardless of who it hurts. She started to cry again, but this time it felt different. Less performative maybe, but still self-pitying. You are just trying to make me feel bad. You always do this. You make me feel like I am a bad person. You did this, Sarah, I said, shaking my head. This isn't me. This is you. You made this choice. You decided that your desire for a luxury item was more important than your son's education. And now you have to live with the consequences. What consequences? What consequences? She sniffled. You are going to make me give the car back? So what? We'll get the money back, and you can stop being so dramatic. It's not that simple, Sarah, I said, rubbing my temples. You signed a contract. You took out money from a joint account without authorization for that specific purpose. This isn't just giving the car back. This is fraud. This is theft. And if it's in my name, and I didn't authorize it, that means you forged my signature, or otherwise misrepresented yourself. Her eyes widened again. I didn't forge anything. I told them you were my husband, and you approved. You lied, I stated flatly. You outright lied to buy a car with money that wasn't yours to spend like that. And now you are going to have to explain that to the police. We heard a car pull up outside, then another. Red and blue lights flashed through the living room window. Sarah gasped. They're here already? Yes, Sarah, I said, walking to the door. They're here? 2 police officers walked up to the door. I opened it. Mr. Peterson, one of them asked, a young officer with a kind but serious face. Yes, that's me, Mark Peterson. We're here regarding a stolen vehicle report, he said, glancing at the new SUV in the driveway, then back at me. And a domestic dispute, I understand. That's correct, I said, stepping aside to let them in. Sarah was standing in the middle of the living room, looking terrified. This is my wife, Sarah Peterson. The officers looked from me to her, then back to me. Sir, can you explain exactly what happened here? The second officer, an older, more seasoned one, asked. I took a deep breath. My wife Sarah purchased that vehicle, I said, pointing outside. It is registered in my name. She purchased it without my knowledge or consent, using the entirety of my son Liam's college tuition fund. That fund was in a joint savings account, specifically earmarked for his education, and she drained it for this purchase. I consider the vehicle stolen, as it was acquired through misrepresentation and theft of funds from an account that was intended for a very specific non-negotiable purpose. I did not authorize the use of those funds for a car, and I did not authorize the purchase of that car in my name. The older officer wrote this down, his face impassive. The younger one looked surprised. Sarah suddenly burst out. He's lying. He knew I wanted a new car. He just didn't want me to have nice things. I looked at her, utterly defeated. Sarah, we have a budget. We discussed this. We have Liam's tuition. You absolutely knew that money was not to be touched for anything else. She said you verbally approved it at the dealership, sir, the older officer said, looking up from his notepad. She lied, I said, my voice firm. I was at work. I never set foot in that dealership. I never spoke to anyone there. I never authorized this. I would never authorize the use of my son's college fund for a luxury car. This is getting complicated, the younger officer muttered. We'll need to see the purchase agreement, registration, and proof of funds withdrawal, the older officer said. Mr. Peterson, can you show us the bank statements for the college fund? I nodded, walking back to my office to retrieve my laptop. As I did, I heard Sarah start to try to talk her way out of it, her voice high and frantic. He's just angry because he wants to control me. He's always been like this. It's our money, technically. I have a right to spend it. It was Liam's money, Sarah. I called out from the office, opening the laptop and navigating to the bank portal. Not ours to just spend. When I came back, the officers were listening patiently to Sarah, but their expressions hadn't changed much. I showed them the zero balance, the large withdrawal, the date. Then I showed them my bank statements for the past few months, proving that I hadn't made any large deposits into the joint account, and that my personal funds were separate. I explained how the tuition fund had been built up over years from specific transfers from my paycheck and tax returns, always marked for Liam's education. The officers looked at the documents, then back at Sarah. She had gone quiet again. Ma'am, the older officer said gently but firmly, if the car is registered in his name, and he states he did not authorize the purchase, and the funds were taken from an account earmarked for a different purpose without his consent, this could be considered a form of financial fraud or even embezzlement, depending on the specific legal interpretation and the amount involved. Sarah finally broke down truly, completely, into racking sobs. Not angry ones, but desperate, terrified ones. You are going to arrest me, she choked out, looking at me with pure hatred, not fear, in her eyes. You are going to let them arrest me? I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching my wife crumble, and feeling nothing but a profound emptiness. My heart ached for Liam, for the future she had jeopardized, and for the life that was now irrevocably shattered. The officers exchanged a look. Ma'am, we're not arresting anyone right now. We're gathering information, but we need to understand what happened from your perspective. And you'll need to show us the purchase documents for the car. Sarah, still sobbing, managed to point towards a bag on the kitchen counter. The younger officer went to retrieve it. Inside, neatly folded, were the sales papers. Car was indeed in my name, with Sarah listed as the buyer, but my signature appearing on several lines. My heart sank. She forged it. She actually forged my signature. The lies were deeper than I thought. Mr. Peterson, the older officer said, holding up a document. Is this your signature? I looked at it. It was a good forgery, but it wasn't mine. There was a slight hesitation in the last loop of the P that I never made. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. That is not my signature. The officer's eyes hardened. He looked at Sarah. Ma'am, this is now a very serious matter. Falsifying signatures on legal documents is a felony. Sarah just shook her head, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. The officers began to talk about taking statements and taking the car into impound as evidence. My heart was breaking, not for Sarah, but for the wreckage of my family, and for the innocent son whose future was now caught in the whirlwind of his mother's selfish act. This was just the beginning. Police stayed for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only an hour and a half. They took separate statements from Sarah and me. Sarah's story was a muddled mess of justification, denial, and victimhood. She claimed I had given her implied consent to use the money, that it was our money anyway, and that I was abusing her by calling the police. She even tried to spin it as me being controlling and preventing her from having anything nice. The officers, I could tell, weren't buying it, especially after I pointed out the forged signature on the purchase agreement. That detail seemed to shift their perspective significantly. They eventually impounded the car. Sarah wailed and screamed as they drove it away, accusing me of ruining her life. I just stood on the porch, watching it go, feeling a strange mixture of grim satisfaction and profound despair. The initial rage had given way to a heavy, aching sorrow. This wasn't a victory. It was a public execution of my marriage, and the collateral damage was immense. The officers advised us to stay separated for the night, suggesting I go to a friend's or relative's house to let things cool down. They said they'd be following up, contacting the bank and the dealership, and that a detective would likely be assigned to the financial fraud aspect. They mentioned that if the forgery was proven, it would elevate the charges significantly. I nodded numbly. After they left, the house was silent, save for Sarah's occasional sniffles from the living room. I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her. I walked into Liam's room. He wasn't home. He was probably at a friend's house studying or maybe just hanging out. A wave of nausea washed over me. How was I going to tell him? He was due home soon. The weight of that conversation pressed down on me like a physical burden. I decided I couldn't tell him over the phone. It had to be face to face. I debated waiting until tomorrow, but he deserved to know sooner rather than later. He deserved to know the truth from me, not from some whispered rumor or police inquiry later. I sent him a text asking him to come straight home when he was done, that we needed to talk. I didn't give details. While I waited, I called my brother David. He's always been my rock, sensible and level-headed. He answered on the second ring. "Hey Mark, everything okay? You sound off." "No, Dave, nothing's okay," I said, and my voice broke. Sarah. She emptied Liam's college fund. All of it. Bought a car. In my name, I reported it stolen. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then, she did what? "Are you serious, Mark? That money was for Liam." David knew how much we'd saved, how much it meant to us. He'd even contributed to it over the years. Small amounts here and there for birthdays or holidays. I explained everything. The discovery, the confrontation, the police, the impounding of the car, the forged signature. David listened patiently, letting out a low whistle every now and then. "Mark, I am so sorry, man. This is just, I can't even believe it. What an absolute betrayal." "I don't know what to do, Dave," I admitted, feeling completely lost. "Liam's coming home soon. How do I tell him? How do I look him in the eye and tell him his mom just wiped out his future savings?" "You tell him the truth, Mark," David said, his voice firm. "And you tell him that you'll move heaven and earth to make sure he still goes to college. This isn't his fault. This is all on her. Look, I am coming over. You shouldn't have to face this alone. I'll be there in 20. True to his word, David arrived just as Liam's car pulled into the driveway. David gave me a quick hug, a silent acknowledgement of the pain. "You got this, Mark. I am here for support, and for Liam." Liam walked in looking tired from studying, but with a slight smile. "Hey Dad, hey Uncle Dave, what's up? Everything okay? Your text sounded urgent." He looked around, sensing the unusual tension in the air. Here is Mom. My stomach clenched. This was it. "Liam," I started, my voice shaky. "We need to talk. All of us. Sit down, son." He looked from my grim face to David's serious one, and his own face began to show concern. He sat down slowly on the couch. I sat opposite him, and David sat next to me. "Liam," I began again, struggling to find the right word. "Something really difficult has happened. It's about your college fund." Liam's eyes widened. He seemed to brace himself. "What about it, Dad? Is everything okay? Did the market crash or something? No, son, I said, taking a deep breath. It's not the market. Your mother, she emptied the account, all of it. Liam stared at me, uncomprehending. Emptied it. What do you mean, empty? For what? She used it to buy a new car, Liam, I explained, trying to keep my voice even, but feeling the pain in my chest. That blue SUV you saw in the driveway earlier, it cost all of your tuition money. Liam's jaw dropped. He looked at me, then at David, then back at me. No, he whispered, shaking his head. No, she wouldn't. She knows how important that is. We just talked about it. I know, son, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I know, I am so sorry. I found out today. I confronted her. I called the police. They just impounded the car. Liam's eyes were wide, filling with tears. Police? Impounded? What are you saying, Dad? Is Mom going to jail? His voice was rising, starting to panic. I don't know, son, I said honestly. She bought it in my name, and she forged my signature on the documents. And she used your tuition money. I reported it as stolen and as financial fraud. It's a serious situation. Liam stood up, pacing the living room. But my tuition. My college. What about engineering school? We've been planning this since I was little. His voice cracked, the tears now flowing freely down his face. All at work, all those sleepless nights for nothing. No, Liam, not for nothing. I insisted, standing up and reaching for him. Pulled away slightly, his face contorted in pain and anger. Liam, listen to me. I promise you with everything I have you will go to college. This changes nothing for your future. It just makes things a lot harder, but we will figure it out. I will figure it out. How, Dad? He cried, turning to face me, his eyes blazing. It was all there, every penny. How could she do this? My own mother. He was looking at me, but it was clear his anger was directed at her. How could she be so selfish? David stepped in. Liam, your dad is doing everything he can. He didn't know. He's just as shocked and hurt as you are, son. More, maybe, because he's dealing with the legal side of it and trying to make it right for you. Liam sank back onto the couch, burying his face in his hands, his body shaking with silent sobs. It was heartbreaking to watch. All his hopes, all his dreams seemed to be crashing down around him. I sat next to him, putting an arm around his shoulder, but he was inconsolable. I don't understand, he choked out between sobs. She always said she loved me. How could she do something like this if she loved me? That question hung in the air unanswered, heavy with implications. I had no answer for him. How could she? The truth was, I didn't understand either. My wife, the woman I had spent half my life with, had betrayed us both in the cruelest way possible. The fallout was just beginning, and it was already destroying everything. Liam's trust in his mother, his sense of security, our family unit. It was all shattered, and the silence from Sarah, still in the living room, offered no comfort, no explanation, no remorse. Just the sound of her own quiet sobs, lost in the wreckage she had created. Liam eventually went to his room, numb and devastated. David stayed for a while longer, offering quiet support. He helped me make a mental list of next steps, contacting a lawyer, talking to the bank about the unauthorized withdrawal, preparing for what was sure to be a bitter divorce. When he finally left, the house felt emptier than ever. Sarah was still sequestered in the living room, presumably still crying. I didn't go to her. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in my office, staring at the empty bank account balance on my computer screen, and my mind started to drift back. I replayed 2 decades of marriage, looking for the signs I must have missed, the red flags I'd ignored. How could I have been so blind? Sarah had always loved nice things. When we first met, she worked as a barista, but always had the latest fashion, even if it meant skipping meals sometimes. I admired her ambition, her desire for a better life. I thought it was just youthful exuberance. As we got older, her spending habits evolved. It wasn't about clothes anymore, but about keeping up with the Joneses. Her friends at the boutique, many of them from wealthier families, had designer bags, expensive vacations, new cars. Sarah always felt like she had to match them. I remember the first time it became a problem. About 10 years ago, she secretly opened a credit card, maxed it out on a trip to a spa with her friends, and then couldn't pay the bill. I found out when the debt collector started calling. I was furious. We had a huge fight. She cried, apologized profusely, promised never again. I paid off the debt, of course, because my credit was tied to hers, and I didn't want it ruined. I told myself it was a one-off, a moment of weakness. She learned her lesson. Then there were the smaller things, the emergencies that required tapping into our general savings, always for something she wanted, but presented as a need. A new washer and dryer when ours were perfectly fine, because the new models had a fancy feature. Remodeling the kitchen because her friend had just done theirs, even though ours was perfectly functional. I always put my foot down eventually, but not without a fight. She'd accuse me of being cheap, controlling. I'd remind her about Liam's future, about our goals. She'd relent, but not happily. I always controlled the main family finances, paying the bills, managing investments. But we had separate checking accounts for personal spending, and the joint savings for Liam's tuition. That was the sacred one. I honestly thought that account was impenetrable. We had decided together years ago that only major expenses, like an emergency surgery, or if one of us lost a job for an extended period, would warrant touching it. And even then, it would be a joint decision. The process of building that fund was meticulous. Every month, a portion of my paycheck went directly into it. Tax refunds went there. Bonuses went there. Birthday money from grandparents for Liam. Even if it was intended for toys, I'd often suggest putting a portion into his college fund, and he, being a smart kid, understood and agreed. We watched it grow, slowly but surely, year after year. It was a source of pride for both of us, or so I believed. It was the bedrock of Liam's future. I recall a conversation about a year ago. Sarah brought up getting a new car. Her old sedan was still running well, but it was 10 years old. I told her we couldn't afford a new one right now. We were so close to the tuition goal, and with inflation, every dollar counted. We agreed to wait, maybe for another year or two, until Liam was settled in college. She seemed disappointed, but she said she understood. That's why this hit so hard. It wasn't just a spontaneous act. It was a planned, deliberate betrayal of that agreement. She must have been planning this for a while. That means she was going behind my back, looking at cars, knowing full well she didn't have the funds for it. Then she saw Liam's tuition money, sitting there, a giant, tempting sum. And the thought of asking me or discussing it must have been too much for her. So she just took. Question of how she managed to get it into my name, with a forged signature, was still nagging at me. Did she just walk in and say I approved it? Did the dealership not verify? It was sloppy and reckless. It showed a complete disregard for the consequences, both legal and personal. I thought about Liam, his face devastated, asking how his own mother could do something like this. He loved her despite her flaws. He saw her as the fun parent, the one who indulged him occasionally. I was the stricter one, the one who worried about finances and responsibilities. And now, she had shattered his perception of her, of his family, of his secure future. That was the most heartbreaking part. Not just the money, but the irreparable damage to his trust. I remembered the time Liam had a big project in middle school, and he stayed up late, working so hard on it. Sarah had been dismissive, telling him to just get it done. I had stayed up with him, helping him research, encouraging him. He had looked up at me, tired but determined, and said, "Thanks, Dad. I want to get into a good college, so I need to start now." And I had looked at him, feeling that swell of parental pride, and promised him we'd make it happen. I'd told him about the college fund, how it was growing, how it was his. I had built that trust with him, and Sarah had just burned it to the ground. Maybe the signs were always there, subtle at first, then growing clearer. Her inability to delay gratification. Her desire for external validation through material possessions. Her tendency to prioritize her own wants over long-term family goals. I had always dismissed it as quirks, as something I could manage, or that she would eventually outgrow. I always told myself she loved us, that she just had a different way of showing it, or that she just wasn't as financially savvy. But this wasn't about financial savvy. This was about a fundamental lack of respect, a profound selfishness that I had never truly understood until now. I felt a profound sense of foolishness. How could I have been so naive? How could I have ignored the whispers, the little red flags, the constant low hum of financial tension that always seemed to originate from her desire for more? I had chosen to trust, to believe in her goodness, to hope for the best. And now, that trust was obliterated. The future was uncertain, messy, and filled with legal battles and emotional wreck. And the first, most painful consequence was Liam's heartbreak. That was the one I knew I had to fix, no matter what it cost me. The next morning was heavy with unspoken words. Liam stayed in his room, the door closed. I could hear music faintly, a sad, slow melody that pierced my own heart. Sarah was still in the living room, curled up on the couch. I hadn't slept at all. I made coffee, but couldn't bring myself to drink it. The taste was bitter, like everything else. Around 8 a.m., Liam finally emerged. His eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, his face pale. He walked straight to the kitchen, avoiding eye contact with Sarah, who sat up slightly. "Morning, sweetie," she said, her voice raspy. Liam didn't answer. He opened the fridge, grabbed a carton of juice, and poured himself a glass. His movements were slow, deliberate. He seemed to carry an invisible weight. "Liam." Sarah started again, her voice softer this time, a hint of desperation in it. "Please, can we talk about this? Your dad is just making a huge deal out of nothing. We'll figure out your college money. I promise." Liam turned, his eyes finally meeting hers, and in his gaze, I saw a raw, unfiltered pain that made me wince.
Figure it out,
he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Mum, you stole my future. You stole what Dad and I worked for 18 years, and you did it for a car." He paused, taking a sip of juice. "Do you know how much that money meant to me? Not just for college, but for what it represented. Your promise. Our family's promise. And you just flushed it away for some stupid SUV that's now sitting in an impound lot, because Dad had to report it stolen." Sarah started to cry again. "Don't talk to me like that, Liam. I am your mother. And I bought it because my old car was unsafe. I was worried about you driving around in a rickety old car when you get your license."
That's a lie.
Liam's voice rose, cracking with emotion. Dad just got the brakes fixed, and it passed inspection last month. You told me you were embarrassed by it because your friends had new cars. Don't you dare try to make this about me or my safety. He walked closer to her, his posture rigid. I don't understand you, Mom. All my life, you told me how proud you were of my grades, my drive. You told me to work hard, that it would pay off. And then you do this. You take the very thing that was supposed to be my reward for all that hard work, my ticket to my dream school, and you spend it on yourself. How do you look at yourself in the mirror? Sarah flinched. Liam, please, you are hurting my feelings. Hurting your feelings? Liam laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. My feelings? Mom, I can't go to college now. Not without that money. Do you have any idea how much debt I'd have to take on? Or how hard it would be to get a scholarship for the full amount at this stage? You just threw away years of my life, years of Dad's life, and you are worried about your feelings? He turned to me, his eyes pleading. Dad, tell me this isn't true. Tell me we can just get the money back. Tell me she didn't really do this to me. My heart broke into a million pieces. I walked over and put my hands on his shoulders. Liam, I am so sorry, son. This is true. She did. But I promise you, we will get you to college. It might be harder. It might mean taking on some loans, but it will not stop you. I will make sure of it. But it was there, Liam said, his voice thick with tears. It was all paid for. I could have focused on my studies, on building my future, without this massive cloud of debt over my head. And now, he trailed off, looking at Sarah with a mixture of disbelief and utter revulsion. Now, every time I look at you, Mom, I am going to see that car. I am going to see my future. Gone. Sarah stood up, her face tear-streaked and defiant. Fine, if that's how you feel, Liam, then fine. You want to blame me? Go ahead. Your father has turned you against me. He always does this. Liam shook his head, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. No, Mom. Dad didn't turn me against you. You did. You chose a car over your son, that's on you, not him. Pulled away from my grasp and walked back to his room, slamming the door. The silence that descended after Liam's door shut was crushing. Sarah and I stood there, amidst the wreckage of our family, the echoes of Liam's pain hanging in the air. Sarah looked at me, her eyes narrowed. See, this is your fault, Mark. You just had to tell him everything. You just had to make me out to be the bad guy. You are the bad guy, Sarah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You did this, not me. I told him the truth because he deserves the truth. And he deserves to know that his father will fight for him, even if his mother won't. Her face twisted into an ugly sneer. Oh, so now you are the perfect parent? The savior. Don't act like you are so innocent. You are just as much to blame for this mess. How am I to blame, Sarah? I asked, incredulous. Because I worked hard to save for our son's education. Because I trusted you with our joint account. Because I believed in the sanctity of our shared goals. Because you were always so controlling with money, she spat. You never let me have anything nice. You always made me feel guilty for wanting things. If you had just let me buy a car sooner, none of this would have happened. I stared at her, utterly bewildered by her twisted logic. She was blaming me for her own reckless, fraudulent act. It was a complete abdication of responsibility, a desperate attempt to shift the blame. It was clear she felt no true remorse for what she had done to Liam. Only anger at being caught and exposed. You really believe that, don't you? I asked, my voice filled with sorrow. You really believe this is my fault? After all these years, you still don't understand the meaning of responsibility or sacrifice, or unconditional love for your child. She scoffed. You don't know anything about my love for Liam. I know that love doesn't empty a child's college fund for a luxury car, I said, my voice rising. I know that love doesn't forge signatures and lie to cover up a selfish act. And I know that love doesn't sit there, blaming the victim when its child is heartbroken and lost. She turned away from me, her shoulders shaking. Not with regret, I realized, but with resentment. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a battlefield. And the first casualty was our son's emotional well-being and his faith in his family. The legal battle was just beginning, but the emotional one had already claimed a profound victory. And it was heartbreaking to witness. Liam's innocent dreams, shattered by his mother's selfishness, would haunt me forever. My immediate goal became crystal clear: protect Liam and ensure his future, no matter what it took. The legal proceedings began to pick up pace. Sarah's lawyer officially filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, but also attempting to include exaggerated claims of my alleged controlling behavior and financial abuse. My lawyer, Miss Davies, calmly refuted each claim, laying out the timeline of Sarah's actions. The draining of the college fund, the car purchase, the forged signature, and the police report. Custody threat, while legally toothless given Liam's age, became a powerful emotional weapon for Sarah. She brought it up constantly. If you don't drop those charges, Mark, I'll tell everyone you tried to take Liam away from me, she'd yell. Even though Liam was 18 and the choice he had already made, clear as day. She'd text him, "Your father is making me look bad to the judge. He's ruining our family. Don't you want us to be together?" Liam, bless his heart, was smart enough to see through it. He'd show me the texts, shaking his head. "She thinks I am stupid, Dad," he'd say, a mix of hurt and anger in his voice. "She thinks I don't know what's really going on. I am not going to lie for her, ever." He had already made it clear to both of us, and to Miss Davies, that he intended to live with me after the divorce was finalized, and certainly once he started college. He even went as far as to draft a short, clear statement for Miss Davies, stating his preference and his reasons, just in case it was ever needed for the court. That meant the world to me. His trust, his choice was everything. The focus shifted to the car. The police investigation continued. Detective Reynolds informed us that the dealership confirmed Sarah had indeed presented herself as my wife, and stated I was aware and approved the purchase. They didn't ask for a physical ID from me, only Sarah's, and relied on her representation. Since the funds came from a joint account and the signature looked like mine, they proceeded. This sloppy verification, while not excusing Sarah's actions, did make the dealership partially liable for not following proper protocols. My lawyer was already looking into this angle, hoping to put pressure on the dealership to return the funds to avoid a larger lawsuit. But Sarah still believed she could talk her way out. She told her lawyer that I had verbally approved the purchase, and that I was now just being vindictive. It was a complete fabrication, but she stuck to it with infuriating stubbornness. Her lawyer, of course, was just doing her job, trying to create doubt. The true heartbreak continued to be Liam. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He worked diligently on scholarship applications, trying to find alternatives to the lost tuition money. He applied for every grant and bursary he could find. He even talked about taking a gap year or going to a community college for a year or two to save up money, and then transferring. This broke my heart. His dream school, his engineering program, was specific. He deserved to go there without compromise, without delay. No, Liam. I told him one evening, finding him hunching over his laptop, filling out another scholarship form. You are not taking a gap year. You are not going to community college unless you want to. You got into your dream school and you are going there on time. I'll make it happen. He looked up at me, his eyes tired. How, Dad? It's so much money, and the court stuff is going to take forever. Applications are due soon. I don't know exactly how, I admitted, but I'll find a way. I'll take out a loan in my name if I have to. I'll work 3 jobs, whatever it takes. This is my responsibility and I will not let her ruin your future. He gave me a small, sad smile. Thanks, Dad. It means a lot. But I could still see the worry etched on his face. He was an adult now, and he understood the immense financial burden. He also understood the emotional toll this entire situation was taking on me. Sarah, sensing Liam's growing distance, intensified her emotional manipulation. She'd leave little gifts for him outside his door, expensive snacks, or clothes he'd casually mention. He'd ignore them, or sometimes quietly give them to me to donate. He wanted nothing from her. His trust was completely shattered. This devastated Sarah even more than the legal battles. But instead of prompting remorse, it just fueled her anger and resentment towards me, whom she blamed for Liam's coldness. She started deliberately causing disruption. She'd turn up the television volume late at night when I was trying to work. She'd accidentally leave piles of dirty dishes in the sink. She tried to make living in the house unbearable, hoping I'd cave, give her what she wanted, and go away. I knew this was a calculated move in the divorce proceedings. If she could paint me as the one who left the marital home, it might weaken my position regarding asset division, or even a temporary restraining order. But I wouldn't budge. My lawyer advised me to document everything. Her abusive texts, her attempts to manipulate Liam, her refusal to contribute to household chores, the emotional distress she was causing. Every little incident I wrote it down, with dates and times. It was exhausting, living in a house with someone who had become a hostile stranger, someone who was actively trying to destroy me. I found myself dreading coming home. The peace I used to find in my own house was gone, replaced by a constant state of alert, of bracing for the next attack. But I couldn't leave. I had to protect Liam, to be there for him, and to keep an eye on her until the divorce and legal matters were settled. It was a miserable existence, but it was necessary. The thought of going to court and facing her, having to recount all of this, filled me with dread. But I knew I had to, not just for Liam's tuition, but for my own peace of mind, and for setting the record straight. She needed to be held accountable. And I needed to make sure Liam saw justice, not just for the money, but for the betrayal of his dreams. The threat of a custody battle, however hollow, just reinforced how far she was willing to go, how little she cared about the actual truth or the well-being of our son in her quest for self-preservation and vindication. It was a bleak, desolate existence, living with a person who had wrought such devastation. But I clung to the hope of Liam's future, a beacon in the dark. With the court dates looming and Liam's college decision approaching, my primary focus became securing his tuition. The impounded car was still tied up in the police investigation and would likely be part of the divorce settlement, but that process was agonizingly slow. I couldn't wait. Liam needed answers now. I started working every extra hour I could. My company offered some freelance opportunities for special projects, and I jumped on them, working late into the night after my regular job. Weekends I pick up odd jobs, coding for startups, building websites for local businesses. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My body ached, but the thought of Liam's hopeful face and his eventual relief kept me going. I also revisited our financial situation with Miss Davies, my lawyer. "Mark, we need to explore all options for Liam's tuition," she said. "We can try for an emergency motion to release funds from a joint asset. But it's not guaranteed, especially with the criminal investigation ongoing. It might be better to pursue a temporary order for spousal support to be directed towards his education. But that's also complicated." "What about loans?" I asked, hating the idea but desperate. "You could take out a Parent Plus loan in your name," she suggested. "The interest rates aren't ideal, but it's an option. Or Liam could take out federal student loans. He might qualify for some grants based on need now, given the situation. But it won't cover everything." The idea of Liam starting his adult life saddled with debt, when we had worked so hard to prevent it, was a bitter pill to swallow. But I knew it was better than him missing out on his dream. "I'll take the loans," I told her. "Whatever Liam needs, I'll borrow it in my name. I'll pay it back. He won't have to carry that burden." I also started researching scholarships relentlessly. Liam had applied for many, but I looked for niche ones, local ones, anything that might add a few more dollars. I reached out to my network, friends and former colleagues, explaining the situation, without going into overly dramatic detail about Sarah, just focusing on a family financial emergency that affected Liam's college fund. A few offered to help, contributing small amounts that added up. It was humbling to ask for help, but I swallowed my pride for Liam. One evening, after Liam had gone to bed, I found myself looking at his college acceptance letter again. The university logo, the prestigious name of the engineering program. He had worked so hard for this, and his mother had so casually, so selfishly jeopardized it all. I thought about selling the house. It was our biggest asset, and the equity could cover his tuition and more. But it was Liam's home, the only home he'd ever known. And selling it would mean a complete uprooting during an already tumultuous time. Miss Davies also advised against it as a primary solution right now. It's a complex asset in a divorce, Mark. Trying to sell it now could complicate the divorce settlement even further, and you might not even get all the proceeds for Liam. Let's focus on securing the tuition first, then deal with the marital assets. So I kept working. I started waking up at 4 a.m. to get an extra hour or two of freelance coding in before my main job. I ate cheap meals, cut out every luxury. I wore the same clothes, didn't buy anything new. Every penny I saved, every extra dollar I earned went into a new separate savings account. This one solely in my name, dedicated to Liam's fall tuition. It was slow going, painstakingly slow, but it was growing. Liam noticed my exhaustion, my quiet determination. He started helping more around the house, taking on chores without being asked, trying to ease my burden. He'd bring me coffee when I was working late, or just sit quietly in my office while I coded, offering silent companionship. Our bond grew stronger than ever in the face of this adversity. He saw what I was sacrificing for him, and he appreciated it deeply. The ongoing tension with Sarah was a constant drain. She continued her emotional abuse, her passive-aggressive behavior. One morning, I found she had deliberately lost some of Liam's scholarship application essays. Luckily, he had backups on his cloud drive. Another time, she accidentally deleted important emails from my laptop while I was away. I started taking my laptop to work, keeping all crucial documents on external hard drives. It was like living with a saboteur. I found myself dreading coming home. Peace I used to find in my own house was gone, replaced by a constant state of alert, of bracing for the next attack. But I couldn't leave. I had to protect Liam, to be there for him, and to keep an eye on her until the divorce and legal matters were settled. It was a miserable existence, but it was necessary. I had a meeting with Liam's college financial aid office. I explained the situation, as much as I could without divulging all the sordid detail. They were sympathetic, offering to re-evaluate his financial aid package based on the new circumstances, but also cautioning that significant last-minute aid was rare. They suggested the Parent Plus loan as a fallback. As the weeks turned into months and the tuition deadline drew closer, I could feel the pressure mounting. But I also felt a fierce resolve. This was my fight. For my son. Sarah might have tried to break him to break us, but she wouldn't win. I would find a way. I would make sure Liam walked onto that campus in the fall, head held high, his future still within reach. Path was dark and filled with obstacles, but the light of his dreams, however faint, guided me forward. I was a man on a mission, fueled by a parent's unbreakable promise. The day of the preliminary hearing finally arrived. It wasn't the full divorce trial yet, but a chance for the judge to hear our arguments regarding the impounded car and the immediate financial issues. Specifically, Liam's tuition. Sarah and I hadn't spoken a civil word to each other in months. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah sat on one side with her lawyer, impeccably dressed, her face a mask of aggrieved innocence. She avoided my gaze. I sat on the other side with Miss Davies, feeling the weight of exhaustion and the burden of all the lies I was about to hear. Liam was not present, per MY request and Miss Davies' advice. We didn't want him exposed to more of this ugliness than absolutely necessary. The judge, a stern but fair woman, listened patiently as Miss Davies presented our case. She laid out the timeline. The establishment of the college fund, its explicit purpose, the large withdrawal, the purchase of the car in my name, the forged signature, and the subsequent police report. She presented bank statements, the police report, and even copies of text messages from Sarah trying to manipulate Liam. Then it was Sarah's lawyer's turn. He tried to paint me as a controlling husband, financially abusive, who denied his wife basic necessities like a reliable car. He argued that the joint account was marital property, and that Sarah had every right to use it. He completely sidestepped the forged signature, instead arguing it was a misunderstanding or a clerical error on the dealership's part. Claimed I was now vindictively trying to ruin Sarah's life by involving the police. He even brought up the non-existent custody issue again, trying to make it seem like I was trying to turn Liam against her. It was infuriating. Sarah sat there, nodding along, occasionally wiping a fake tear from her eye. My blood boiled, but Miss Davies had coached me to remain calm, to let her handle the legal arguments. When it was my turn to speak, I spoke directly to the judge, my voice clear and steady. "Your Honor," I began, "I did not call the police out of vindictiveness. I called them because my wife Sarah betrayed the sacred trust of our family. She took every penny from an account specifically designated for our son Liam's college education. An education he has worked his entire life for. She did this to buy a luxury SUV for herself, without my knowledge or consent, and she forged my name on the documents to do it." I looked at Sarah then just for a moment. Her face was impassive. I continued, "This isn't about me denying her a car. This is about her destroying our son's future. It's about her prioritizing a material possession over her own child's dreams. And the money she took, it was built by years of sacrifice, not just from me, but from Liam himself, who always put his savings into that fund, believing in our promise to him." The judge looked at the documents, particularly the forged signature and the zeroed-out tuition account. She asked Sarah's lawyer, "Counselor, can you explain the discrepancy regarding the signature on the purchase agreement? Mr. Peterson states it is not his, Sarah's lawyer stammered. Your Honor, my client states that Mr. Peterson verbally authorized the purchase. The dealership perhaps did not verify the signature adequately, but my client believed she had full authorization to act on his behalf. So she claims she had verbal authorization, but still signed his name without his explicit consent, the judge asked, her eyebrow raised. That's a significant detail, Counselor. It suggests misrepresentation at best, forgery at worst. She then looked directly at Sarah. Miss Peterson, did you sign your husband's name on these documents? Sarah hesitated, then mumbled, I thought it was okay. He always lets me handle things. The judge narrowed her eyes. He always lets you handle things for a purchase of this magnitude, draining a dedicated college fund, without his direct knowledge or presence at the dealership. Sarah squirmed. It was just an old car. I needed a new one. It was our money. It was Liam's money, Miss Peterson. The judge corrected sternly, tapping the bank statement. A fund specifically for your son's education. Your husband has provided ample evidence of this fund's purpose. Furthermore, he states he was at work at the time of purchase and did not give verbal consent. The police report states the vehicle was found on the property, and Mr. Peterson reported it as stolen due to these circumstances. The vehicle is currently impounded as evidence. The judge then turned to Miss Davies. What is your immediate request, Counselor? Your Honor, our immediate request is for an order for the full amount of the misappropriated college funds to be returned to Mr. Peterson for Liam's tuition, either from Miss Peterson's personal assets or from the proceeds of the car's sale, if it is determined to be illegally obtained property. Liam has university enrollment deadlines approaching rapidly. We also request a protective order to prevent Miss Peterson from further interfering with Liam's educational pursuits, or from financially burdening Mr. Peterson with costs related to her actions. Sarah's lawyer protested vehemently, arguing it was premature, that the divorce proceedings should handle asset division. But the judge was clearly swayed by the college fund aspect. While the divorce will address the broader marital assets, the judge stated, the immediate need of a student's college tuition, especially under these circumstances, takes precedence. The court finds sufficient prima facie evidence to suggest Miss Peterson acted unilaterally and potentially unlawfully in diverting a significant sum of money from a dedicated fund and in forging a signature. This has caused immediate and severe financial hardship for her son's education. She then delivered her preliminary ruling. Pending further investigation and final divorce decree, I order that Miss Peterson is enjoined from accessing any further joint accounts without Mr. Peterson's explicit written consent. The impounded vehicle will remain in police custody. Furthermore, Miss Peterson shall provide immediate documentation of all liquid assets in her personal accounts. I will issue a temporary order for spousal support to be directed to a separate account controlled by Mr. Peterson, specifically for Liam's tuition, until the misappropriated funds are recovered or alternative arrangements are made. The amount will be determined based on her income and contribution to the household, with the understanding that this is primarily to mitigate the damage she has caused to her son's education fund. Her lawyer immediately began whispering to her, trying to calm her down. She had expected to walk away scot-free to blame me and get her way, but the judge had seen through her. The judge continued, I also want to emphasize, Miss Peterson, that your son's welfare and educational future are paramount. Your actions have put that at severe risk. The court expects full cooperation in resolving this matter swiftly and ensuring Liam's education is not further jeopardized. The proceedings ended. Sarah stormed out, refusing to even look at me. I felt a wave of profound relief mixed with continued sorrow. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. Criminal investigation was ongoing. The divorce would be protracted. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope for Liam's future. The judge had seen the truth. The reckoning had begun. The judge's preliminary ruling was a turning point. It didn't solve everything, but it provided immediate relief and validation. The temporary spousal support, while not enough to cover all of Liam's tuition, was a start. More importantly, it sent a clear message to Sarah. The court saw her culpability. The police investigation continued for several more weeks. Ultimately, the district attorney decided not to pursue felony forgery charges, opting instead for a lesser charge of unauthorized use of funds, combined with the financial aspects being handled in civil court as part of the divorce. Detective Reynolds explained that while the forgery was evident, proving intent beyond a reasonable doubt for a criminal conviction could be difficult. Given the joint account and marital relationship, and a civil resolution was often faster for fund recovery. It was a disappointment, as I felt she deserved criminal accountability for forging my name. But I understood the practicality. My main goal was Liam's tuition, not a jail sentence for his mother. The impounded car was eventually released to me as the registered owner. I immediately sold. The market for used luxury SUVs was good, and while I didn't get back every penny of Liam's original tuition fund, the proceeds, combined with the temporary spousal support, my extra freelance work, and Liam's own scholarship efforts, meant we were finally miraculously able to cover his first year's tuition and living expenses. Liam received his financial aid update shortly after the judge's ruling, which included a small but crucial new grant based on unforeseen family circumstances. He read the letter, then looked at me, a genuine smile finally lighting up his face. "Dad," he said, "I am going. I am actually going." That moment, that smile was worth every sleepless night, every stressful conversation, every agonizing hour in court. My heart swelled with pride and relief. We had done it. Against all odds, he was going to his dream school. The divorce itself was, as expected, protracted and bitter. Sarah fought for every penny, every piece of property. She continued to portray herself as a victim, but her arguments grew weaker as the facts came out. Her own lawyer seemed increasingly frustrated with her lack of cooperation and her blatant lies. The judge, having seen her demeanor in the preliminary hearing, was not easily swayed. The final divorce decree came through a few months later. I got the house. Sarah received a modest settlement, less than she hoped for, and significantly less than half of our combined assets, given her action. The judge noted her financial impropriety and the damage it caused to our son's education as a significant factor in the asset division. It was a clear, if understated, judgment against her. Sarah moved out, taking only her personal belongings. She didn't say goodbye to Liam. He didn't seek her out. Their relationship, once so close, was now irrevocably broken. It was a heartbreaking consequence, but one she had brought upon herself. Liam was hurting, but he was also resilient. He had seen the truth, and he had chosen his path. As for me, the divorce was finalized, but the scars remained. The emotional toll was immense. I was exhausted, financially strained, but free. Free from the constant anxiety, the hidden betrayals, the emotional manipulation. I had lost a wife, but I had saved my son's future, and in doing so, I had strengthened our bond in a way nothing else could have. Liam started college in the fall, full of excitement and a renewed sense of purpose. I drove him to campus, helped him move into his dorm. We talked, laughed, and even cried a little, not about the past, but about the hopeful future stretching out before him. As I hugged him goodbye, he looked at me, his eyes shining. "Thanks, Dad," he whispered. "For everything. You saved me." I just hugged him tighter, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He didn't say it, but I knew he understood the true cost of that tuition, not just in money, but in the shattering of a family, and the profound sacrifices made. Life slowly began to normalize. The house was quieter, but it was a peaceful quiet. I still worked extra hours to pay off the loans I'd taken for Liam, but it felt different now. It was for a tangible, bright future, not to repair a past wound. I started exercising again, eating better, trying to heal. I sometimes wonder about Sarah. I hear snippets through mutual acquaintances. She's struggling, blaming everyone but herself. She got another car, a much cheaper one, and is still complaining about her unfair divorce settlement. She never apologized to Liam, not truly. And that, more than anything, tells me the kind of person she truly is. The experience taught me a profound lesson about trust, about red flags, and about the lengths a parent will go for their child. It was a heartbreaking journey, filled with betrayal and pain, but it ultimately forged an unbreakable bond between me and my son. We survived. We rebuilt. And while the wounds will always be there, they are now scars of survival, not open sores. We chose a new beginning, bittersweet but real, moving forward into a future where trust was earned and promises were kept.